Hello, everybody. I am super excited to be here. Hopefully you can see the screen. If you can't, I guess put something in the chat and say hello.
We can see both you and the screen, so you're all good.
Awesome. Great. So we're just going to hop right into things, and it is going to be a little bit of excitement because there's a lot of shifts in the whole world around Looker Studio, Data Studio, all the things in between. So here's a couple of goals that we're going to do here. We're going to first understand why you should and possibly should not use Looker Studio plus GA4 as your visualization piece here. We want to look at the GA4 structure and maybe how to think about using it with Looker Studio if you're going to go the route of using custom visualizations. And when you decide, hey, we as a team, as a contractor, as a company want to use Looker Studio to start visualizing our information, let's see about how we need to structure that. We also want to hop into some of the tactical strategy for utilization. We're going to go brief. We have a lot of things to cover just because of how many things there are out here in the world. We are going to talk about the GA4 limitations. We're going to talk about the GA4 API huge limits, which has been a huge hot topic this past week. So I'm going to touch briefly on that. Your plans. We're also going to talk about the future because that is always fun. And then we're going to have some Q&A. I'll chill here, say hello on the Wondery app or wherever we're going to do some Q&A. So that's that. About me, this is my glowing face right here, JJ Reynolds. I'm the founder of MEDIAUTHENTIC. It's an agency. We do Analyze, Tag Manager, all that jazz. Also run lookerstudio.vip. You can go do that little sidebar. It's just a blog sharing lots of fun things there. And we also run Better Than Data, which we train agencies on how to do just this. I live in Reno, Nevada, and it is mountain biking, hiking, cross-country skiing out in Lake Tahoe. And if you want to connect, let's talk about LinkedIn. This is just our team. We can say hi, and we're going to hop into it right now. So the first thing that we need to talk about is that Data Studio is no longer called Data Studio. It is called a Looker Studio. So I fixed it for Google right there. Problem solved. So why on earth does GA4 exist? Because this is something that we really need to understand while we are building out our plan for visualizing our GA4 data. And there's going to be a lot of talks about this, but I'm just going to do the most brief overview of why this exists. So there is Universal Analytics GA3. There was a few problems with it. Okay, it was session based, so a lot of things were problematic with sessions. We had scope problems with page views and events and a lot of other things. Product scope and transactions weren't part of products and revenue. If you know, it was a chaotic mess. We had to do a lot of hacks to try to customize basically event measurement. Apps were, least to say, difficult. If you're trying to measure an actual web app or even a mobile apps, even web apps were sometimes difficult because of single page applications and a lot of that information. How are you supposed to export data? It was kind of, that's where a lot of the connectors started coming into play. It was very difficult to do so. And then we only had 3 event variables. I was like, come on, we only had category, action, and label as things that we could store information inside of that were kind of outside of custom dimensions. We're not here to talk about the GA3 though, so I'm not going to even touch on that too much. We then have the GA4 solutions to these exact problems. So everything's an event. Once you can grasp this, your life is changed, and stop trying to fight it. There are some nuances to this with sessions and landing pages and all that jazz. But if you can remember everything's an event, your life will be so much easier when you start to visualize this information in the future. You do have unlimited customization, more or less. Okay, that's just a big caveat. There are streams, so you can apps versus web. So it makes that a solution of apps more simple, easier to understand. And then automatic event collection, which can be a beautiful godsend or a terrible nightmare, depending on how your tech stack is situated. Whew. Okay, so why would you want to use Looker Studio, right? Why would you want to do this? And here are there's 5 reasons I've got. The first one is probably the most important one if you're working with clients or teams that are not GA people, right? There's 2 types of people in this world. There are Google Analytics people and there are non-Google Analytics people. There are numbers people and then there are non-numbers people. You can put yourself into either of those 2 camps. But giving people advanced interactions where they can drill into sources and sessions, and you can add explanations of what the heck is a page view, like how you define a page. You can add all those explanations into a Looker Studio visualization. You can also give people the ability to drill down. So say, for example, you have a page that's your beautiful landing page that you spent so much time, money, and effort to utilize. And then what you want to do is you want to drill into that and see all the events that happen. It allows you to very quickly do that. You also can build some sexy reports, okay? It's like custom UI, and who doesn't love a sexy report? You can also easily merge different information together. So if you're using Google Analytics, the GA4 interface with their custom, ability to customize things and the ability to build out more custom visualizations inside of GA4 is awesome. But if you want to start blending things and merging that with other information, or start categorizing things, or using custom functions to group things together, it can get a little bit dicey. And it also gives you a centralized location for everyone to look. So you can say, hey, team, everybody, we've even bought like custom domains for clients to redirect them to the dashboard so that everyone remembers, go to mydashboard.com and they can go to their specific Looker Studio report. So what do you do with GA4 and how do you think about it? And this is the analogy that I would like to give you, especially in relation to using Looker Studio, because the customizations in GA4 translate into Looker Studio, and your planning is going to be where you get the most benefit. If you can plan well and don't just migrate, don't just push the the universal analytics migration wizard that's like built into GA, like it's almost never goes well. So just try to think about it like this. So imagine you go to the grocery store and you see all these things, right? You walk into the grocery store, or you go to the market, you go to anything like that. So what do you see here? You see some peppers, you have some vegetables, you have all these things. With that, you could make a beautiful curry. You could make some like some fried food. You could also make a beautiful soup, right? You could take those same ingredients and spin it up into a bunch of different things. Okay, you can just go into curries, you can go to fried things, you can do all this different stuff. And that's where you want to start thinking about your Google Analytics 4 visualizations, because you can take those events and you start customizing events and parameters and all those things and build something that is unique to you and answers your specific questions. And that's the beauty of GA4. So the biggest thing you want to think about is everything is an event. And I'm going to harp on this until the day that GA4 decides to not use this. But GA4 is everything's an event. So here I've got, let's see, 6 page views. We got row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, row 6, row 7. You can see the time that those occurred at. You have 105, 2 at 105, 106, 107, 108, 109. And then we have the session ID, and you can see we got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and ABC and ABC. So if you're gonna look at these events, right? The event is the, oh, I have a little analogy, I have little animations. Haha. We have the event name on the far left, event. Then on the right side, we have parameters in the green. So the event is then being modified. So you have a page view. Awesome. Page view occurred. Cool. At the time of 105. Awesome. With the session ID of 123, 123. So if you count all the session IDs that occurred at 1 o'clock, you'll have 2 sessions. If you count all the page views you have 6. And so that's like what's happening in the background. And when you start using Looker Studio, you have to really understand this. Otherwise, you can end up in a pickle really, really quickly, because the pickles are fermented cucumbers, and you don't want to do that. So the pages, the IDs, all those things are parameters that are attached to an event name. All right. So remember, everybody, think event or parameter. That's what you want to do, is event or parameter. So event, conversion, even micro conversions. A page view is a conversion. Everyone wants to fight me on this, but it is a conversion. It has occurred. A page view has occurred. Everyone thinks of add to carts as a conversion, purchases. No, every single event is a conversion. You have to mark it as a conversion in GA4, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Go watch the other people who talk about the GA4 interface, but think about every event as a GA4 as a conversion. So for example, we got page views, we got generate lead, we got view item. Don't capitalize them like this, because for some reason, Google Slides wanted to just capitalize everything. They should all be lowercase and underscored. So you have all these different types of things. You can make your own events, right? You can customize them. I'll talk about that in a second. We then have the parameter. right? So you can modifications or nuances. So for example, page view, where did it occur? On the about page. We have a view item. What item was viewed? Oh, our super cool widget 1. Generate lead. What lead? Was it a quiz? What was the name of it, right? All those different types of things you want to start thinking about is what are the conversions loosely of like page views, generate leads, view item, etc. And then what do you need to know about it? Okay, so that's what you want to think about. So what page was it on? What type was it? Anything along those lines, you can start to think of as a parameter. So page location is a very common one that's already done. I personally love a lead type. So you can use quiz, like is it a quiz or a white paper or a PDF? All these things you can start customizing. Page height, that's also a fun one. So that is what you need to start thinking about. And you're like, JJ, you have not even talked about Looker Studio yet. And that's because the data collection strategy that you have is going to dramatically change how you visualize. And that will set you apart from everybody else, okay? It's gonna set you apart from any competition if you can perfect your data collection strategy for how you take action. So what questions do you have? What info, and like this is kind of the event parameter thing I want to talk about, right? What questions do you have is very much what events should you be storing? What information do you need to have to make informed decisions? All of these things, and what actions will you take? Very, very important. You want to try and collect the best information as you can, because at the end of the day, you have to have information to make a decision. That's it. You just want to keep repeating this, collect better information, start with questions, keep going, and then you want to repeat again. And just for a reminder, events equal micro conversions for everybody who wants to forget that. Okay, so now let's talk about events and parameters. Here we go. I bet you have never seen these lovely events before. This is something custom that you can do. So impression underscore offer, aware underscore offer, all these different things. You can make up whatever your heart desires. It does not matter. Just want to have to understand that there are different levels of micro conversions. So for example, if you have an inline blog post call to action, right? You want to see, does someone see that? You could have impression of that offer inside of your blog post. Aware, did they stick around for 10 seconds? Engage, they click into it. You can define these however you want to. It does not matter. But with GA4, it allows you to easily do this. And then remember, you're like, oh, which offer? We have a dozen offers. Bam, that parameters have entered the chat, guys. So then you can say, which offer? Oh, it was our high ticket thing. Oh, it was our GA4 webinar. Oh, it was the GA forward event. It does not matter. So you can have these parameters that modify your events to then understand how to visualize that. And you're like, whoa, 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 we still haven't talked about the actual Looker Studio aspect of things. And that's important because the data collection is so important. So again, parameters are modifications of events, especially when you're talking about Looker Studio. So who's ready for some real world examples? I see the chat, all right? I've seen the thing. So if you guys want to like drop any questions in there, I'm monitoring that as well. But we're gonna hop into some of the API stuff, don't worry. So here's a real world example. I own this website, so I'm going to use it because, hey, free promotion. All right. So here's lookerstudio.vip. It's a content site, not really much for sale. We got some custom visualizations. We got some multiple lead magnets. We got there's a cheat sheet. And then there's, if you go to the tools section, there's different types of free custom visualizations. So look at this. Do you guys see this right here? Okay. So here we have leads by type. We've got on the left side, we have the name, we have the super scorecard, the image metric grid, the explain it tool, and the cheat sheet, all the ways. This is like a single day. I think this was yesterday or the day before. We have the number of people who saw that, number of people who then stuck around for a little bit. We have then on the far right, number of generated leads. And you're like, how on earth did you do this? How did this? All right, we created a custom parameter, fs underscore name, so that we know this is the name of the thing. And then here are event names. That's it, guys. That's all you have to do, is just have a parameter that tells you what type or what lead it was. And then you have event names that tell you the micro conversions, right? Conversions along the way. You can make this just generate lead. That's what Google recommends. Or you can have different steps, totally up to you. All right. Remember drilling into traffic. Here we go. Zooming out one level. We can now have source, medium, campaign. Bada bing, bada boom. You want to see just organic? Click on that. You want to see just something else? Awesome there. You can then take that, same information, right? We're just looking at two things, the event name and the parameter of fs_name. Now you can see on the left side, we have the lead name of the image metric grid, and on the right side, we have the cheat sheet. Very different funnels, right? We've got very different like styles of funnels here, but you can easily compare and see that because we're using only two things, event name and one parameter. All right. Just wanted to that's the same information. Okay. So now I know I talk really quickly, but I want everybody to take a deep breath, including myself, and nobody panic because things have gotten wild with API limits and all that jazz. And I'm sure some of you have tried this or like, how on God's green earth am I going to get this to work? So everybody inhale and nobody panic. Okay, cool. That was great. So think event or parameter, event equal micro conversions. Okay, here we go. We're going through the same thing. I know you're like, oh my goodness, we already saw this. It's really, really important. Parameters, modifications, or nuances. And we just saw that in application, right? We saw the event names were the micro conversions, the steps that the person is going through. And then the parameter was the modification. And we had the lead name, which we used fs name as the actual thing. Okay, so really important, not talking about APIs yet, but if you want to just connect it to GA4 by itself, you have to go into your admin settings, go to custom definitions and create a custom definition for that parameter. So us using fs_name, you had to come in here, create custom dimensions, type in fs_name, and bam, you can access it via Looker Studio in the direct connection. That's all you have to do. Nothing too fancy, but it's really, really important that like, if you're going to connect it directly, that is going to be something that you just want to do upfront. So another really, really important thing, I know there's lots of important things, is that events are not tied to parameters. And so you're like, what does that mean, JJ? Great question. So here are a bunch of things that we're sending with a event. And we're sending this with every single event. So the config tag in Tag Manager, every single event is getting all of these little things, okay? So here you can see that we have the page category. If you see that, the second one down. We're gonna hop back to that. So if you use WordPress, you can categorize things into like different styles of posts, right? If you have blog posts, things like that. So every event can have any parameter, okay? So for example, ready for some examples because I love examples. This page category is really, really important for what we do because look at this, there's a little GIF. So you have the category of pro tips. You click on it, it then filters all of your pages to every single page that exists in that category. Because, right, every single parameter, a parameter, page category, parameter, the page URL, as we just called it page clean here, allows you to filter that. So then every single event that occurs on that page now has the page category. So you can see all the clicks that occurred, the scrolls that occurred, the events that occur, everything that occurred on that page is now also stamped with the category. So that is something that is really important for you to understand as you start visualizing things. You can really level up what your visualizations can do if you can remember events are micro conversions, and then parameters are modifications. So every single event, right, the page view event has the category now of pro tips, Looker Studio updates. And if you go over to lookerstudio.vip, you can kind of see this in action if you want to inspect it and do some kind of ninja stuff. I'm not really like, you can deconstruct that as far as you'd like to. Okay, so just again, category over here, this is something that is very, very a parameter related, and then over here on the far right is your actual URL. So you can dance with your data in Looker Studio, and that is okay. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room that is blowing up the chat, and that is the API limits, okay? So that is something that is very important that we want to understand. And just for everyone who's like, what are you talking about, JJ? GA4 just updated their export data stuff. Don't need to hop about all the nuances, but basically they kind of shanked us all that we're using the free connection, right? Looker Studio free, GA4 free, connection between also free. And so you are limited to 1,250 core tokens per project or per property per hour. So basically, you can only access it very limited. Like I think on our team, it's like we can go like 15 minutes like of building something before hitting the limit. And then also your concurrent requests, that's the second one underneath where it says 10 there. So like you can only have 10 requests at the same time, which if you're building some really complex reports, you're going to hit mighty fast. So this is how I like to think. There's the GA4 team and we got the Looker Studio team, and GA4 was just like, see you later. You guys mean nothing to us. And that is kind of what happened here. It took everybody by surprise, myself included. I don't have a Google rep. If anybody works at Google and is watching, please contact me and say hi. And so this is what happened. So what are our options? These are all of our options. Okay. And I'm gonna just start with Tag Manager because I love Google Tag Manager like it's my baby. I don't have a baby, but if I had one right now, it's Google Tag Manager. So Tag Manager sends information to GA4. That's where we're all starting. Okay. So then we can go from there and we got a lot of options. Option number one, this is what we had: Tag Manager, GA4, Looker Studio, bam. So that's what happened. You're going to hit that threshold if you're doing any type of like complex reporting or like a lot of people looking at it, you're going to hit that problem. All right. Then we've got other options. We've got Tag Manager GA4, a partner hosted connector. So a lot of people are like trying to solve for this. I know Supermetrics, they say that they like cache things. So they try to like cache information for you to limit that API threshold. A few others are trying the same, where they're trying to build like a hosted connection. It's just very complicated. Okay, it's very hard to do the plug and play where it was just as easy, where you could grab any field you want, any metric, any dimension, anything you wanted. Very difficult, but I imagine that a couple of the big players like the Supermetrics, the Palm Analytics, the Porter Metrics, all the other connectors are going to try and solve this, because basically it's a huge market grab right now. So that I expect that to pop on up, but you can't really do it right now. There's not really that much. We got another option. We got Tag Manager to GA4 to BigQuery to Looker Studio. The problem with this is that BigQuery is complicated. I can write SQL. I don't like it. I don't like that I can write SQL because I'm a marketer who likes numbers, not a developer who happened to become a marketer. But if you have a development team, it's a great option because you can use BigQuery to then store that information, all the information. Then you can group it, segment it, partition it, do whatever you want to do. It's your data. You can mess it up as much as you'd like to. And then you want to connect it to Looker Studio. You just have to really, really understand what an event and a parameter is, because you're going to be dealing with that a lot inside of BigQuery. And if you're not a developer, you have to figure out how to talk to a developer about understanding what you would like to see in your final tables. All right. And then here is the roundabout way that I think is probably going to be the method of the future. And so as you can see, the yellow line is not very crazy, or is very crazy. So what you can do is Google Tag Manager to GA4 to BigQuery, right? So that's step one. Then you put in a lot of effort and learn a new tool that's like a cloud tag manager. Analytics Canvas seems to be the rising tide, that they have a lot of the stuff built out already, where they can help you build the GA4 APIs or GA4 BigQuery export queries, and you can connect that together. The problem is, as you can see by the utmost box, is that it requires money. Okay, so I think the days of the free connections are almost gone. Okay, so like that's just, if you can try to say, hey, we lived a great life of using free 99 as the baseline of our entire pipelines, the better off you're going to be with the frustration of the future, because you're probably going to have to spend money at some point, unless Google decides to 180, which I do not see that happening. But if anybody who works for Google, say hi to me, message me on LinkedIn, say hello. Because I don't think that it's just not going to go back that way. There's a lot of reasons and logistics in the background, but here are your options for the most part. It's something like this. So then we have here are the solutions, right? This is just more of a list format. Use less charts. Lame. That's not fun. Okay, you can share it with less people. Who on earth would do this, right? If you have 100 people at your client's company viewing your report, doesn't work. Upgrade to GA360. All right. So is this an option? If you're spending 140K a year on GA360, it's still a problem. Okay, you're still running this limit. It's 10 times the limit. But that's something there. Data warehouse, that's the BigQuery option. So that's unmanaged BigQuery. And then you have the data warehouse that is a managed kind of solution that people are working on. And then you have a warehouse connector. So that's going to be like your Supermetrics, your things like that. And then the data warehouse is like the people that manage in between. So like Analytics Canvas, I'm not paid by them. They don't have an affiliate program, so I can't even make money from you guys. But Analytics Canvas is basically like a drag and drop builder where they can use their BigQuery connection or GA4 connection, but you are kind of like the data architect. But you don't have to really know SQL. You just have to know how the information is being played with. They have a 30-day free trial. And if you want to say hi to them in the chat and say JJ sent you, that'd be awesome. But they have a 30-day free trial, which is really awesome. Like it's really probably the best free trial on the internet. And so I would recommend go try Analytics Canvas, or if you have anything, or if you know how to use BigQuery, that's also an option. So these are kind of the options that we're looking at and we're using. Just full disclosure, we pretty much are going the Analytics Canvas route using their tool, and then using the BigQuery export. So that's just people who ask, hey, JJ, how are you guys doing it? That's our plan. That's what we're doing. It's only been out for what, a week and a half now. All right. Hey guys, remember everything's an event. So that's what we want to remember, because no matter what you do, right, is those visualizations that I showed you are requiring you to think of your data collection strategy of what events are we storing and what parameters are associated with that. Very, very important. And it's the most important thing that you need to like understand to visualize anything without screwing up your numbers. So let's try to be strategic, because your strategy and GA4 are going to become more tightly knit than ever before. With Universal Analytics, it was more of like you could plug and play. They gave you a bunch of default reports. GA4, as everybody of you know, has less built-in default reports and less information to like overall give you like, hey, here's what you get. Run off with it into the world. You have to start customizing it, because they gave us that ability, which is like a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing because if you are advanced and you understand how to think about things, you can really strategize and be like this dude where you got two big strong arms of GA4 in one arm and your strategy in the other arm. What you don't want to be is like this guy where you got GA4 in one arm and your strategy on the other arm. So that's what you want to try and think about as best as you can, is how are we strategizing this beyond just the basic like page views and purchases and generate leads. Because in 6 months, you're going to ask yourself, why on earth do we do this? And then this is what you're going to look like. You're going to look like GA4, where you put a lot of time, money, and effort into things. And then you'll be over here with your strategy and have a limp little arm on the side. So please remember these things, okay? Ask better questions than your default reports, okay? So like start looking at your events, micro conversions, and your parameters, modifications of those events. Remember that everything's an event within reason, okay? There's various, I know some people might be like, oh my goodness, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. Basically, everything's an event, more or less. Parameters can help you understand the next level nuances, because that is very, very important to understand, and decide where you're going to store your data. Okay, but decide what you're going to do, where you're going to put that, because you have the GA4 connection, we have all these things, and we can kind of go from there. So guys, that is it. I see a couple of questions in the chat. We've got some time. If anybody here is like, oh my goodness, I love your vibes. We have a team. Head over to MEDIAUTHENTIC.com/GA4word. I know, custom domain, love it. And we have a technical strategy audit. And it is super, super like strategic, right? Not just like auditing your cross domain and all that jazz. That's boring. That's basic. Go on Fiverr, find somebody to do that. This is strategic, basically merging your marketing efforts with your GA4 implementations and making a one big happy family of strategy and GA4. I think we've got some time for Q&A. There's me again. Hi. But I think we have some time for Q&A, and if that's wrong, let me know.
Yes, we're ahead of time at the moment. So
hey,
yes, so we've got about 15 minutes and a bit for Q&A. So whilst we're doing that, then JJ, I'm going to ask a question, which is related to GA4, and apologies, I missed the start. I'm trying to juggle a few things. Why doesn't Google Analytics 4 expose the like native dimensions into Looker Studio? So things such as I'm trying to think, like site search term, or I don't know, other native dimensions.
It's I think this is like basically when you turn something into a dimension, okay, it has to then store that information ready to be accessed. So like think of it kind of as a table where you have all of your dimensions and then how that's broken down. And so when you turn something into a dimension, it takes more bandwidth from Google to either parse that or store it. And so that is, I believe, what they're trying to do is limit the amount of resources. I think that probably Google in the past, they built analytics and it was a slow burn over time, right? Google Analytics launched and then they bought Urchin tracking module for the UTMs, and then it slowly increased users. And then they realized this is really expensive to maintain because we have to keep all these dimensions and all these things. And then they launched GA4 because of like GDPR and all those other pieces and all that other stuff, right? And GA4 had whole market adoption, right? So like basically they have like millions of people that hopped on the GA4 immediately, whereas Universal Analytics was just a slow like over time. And so I think that like GA4, they built it both to be strategic in the sense of costs of like, hey, like let's cut, like it's expensive to maintain all this. And then we have the dimensions, which are like allowing, it's only give you 50 or 25 or whatever. I think it's 25. And so that's basically what I think is the reason. And it's just because they're trying to limit their costs and do all those things. They give you the option of turning those into dimensions and also accessing those in their own reports, which take longer to load because they're having to unnest all those parameters to then create those reports. So that's what kind of my 2 cents on it. Yeah. Okay. I think there's some questions if we can like, is that cool?
Yes, so we've got 3 questions. I'm just going to the Q&A bit on Zoom. I'll read them out in order.
Yeah.
So the first one is from Mango. He says, how does the API limit manifest? Is there a notification or do things just stop working?
Yeah, so there's actually 2 different, you'll get a pop-up, like you'll know immediately when you hit that. It'll pop up and it'll say like you've hit the threshold. So it'll either say that you've hit it for this hour. If you see the word hour, it means you've hit that hour threshold. If you see you have too many concurrent requests, you've hit the 10 requests at a time threshold. So you either want to like refresh the report and try again, or maybe remove some of the charts off the page and try that. Okay, so there's like 2 different errors that you will see and you will know it. Like you will know it and you'll be like, what is this? And I'm just letting you know now that's what those 2 errors are going to be.
Okay, yeah, I guess it's almost like I'm thinking back to GA3 where if you generate a report that triggered sampling on the API, on that it was almost like on certain tools you didn't see the sampling flag that was enabled, and thus you didn't know that the data was not as accurate as possible.
Yeah.
But at least they do expose. They tell you that it's in the Looker Studio interface that there's something not right. And the second question we've got here is from Dan. It says, can you explore a little bit more best way to handle Looker quota constraints?
Yeah, so Dan, the Looker quota restraint is basically you either have to have a really expensive connector that's going to come out, I'm sure, that's going to be basically like storing that, caching that information, and then pulling it for you, or do that kind of warehouse solution, right? Of saying that you're going to store it in BigQuery and either access it somewhere else. And that's like the BigQuery solution is like the best solution, but again, I don't like telling people to go become a SQL developer. It just doesn't sit really right with me. And I really try to avoid that as much as possible. But that's kind of your options, a kind of a rock and a hard place there.
And Dan's asked a follow-up question. He said he's got a GA360, but even with that, these limits are still causing a problem for him.
Yeah, GA360 is only 10 times that limit, which sounds like a lot. Like if you had 10 times the money in your bank account, I'm sure you'd be excited. But 10 times of this is like, you still hit it. You just hit it. Maybe instead of 10 minutes, you hit it in 25 minutes. Like you're still going to hit it.
And we've got a question from Rob. He says, for the quota workarounds, can you see any drawbacks of using something like Google Sheets to dump the data? So in effect, using Google Sheets for the proxy.
Yeah. So the downside of Google Sheets in general is going to be, where do you aggregate your metrics? So for example, say you wanted to see number of users by day broken down by page. Okay, so let's say you have 3 pages on your website, an about page, a home page, and a contact us page. and you want to see how many users were on that on January 1st. If one user went to all 3 pages, that's going to be counted on all 3 of those things. So then when you go to sum that up, you're going to have way more users than you'd thought because it's being aggregated before it hits the Google Sheet. So if you say, for example, that you had 10 users on your site and all 10 users hit all 3 of your pages because you have a small website and that's on purpose. So it'll say 10 users hit the about page, 10 users hit the home page, 10 users hit the contact us page. When you go to sum that up, it says you have 30 users. But in reality, you only had 10 who hit 3 pages. And so that's what you have to figure out in Google Sheets is just be really strategic in how you're going to store that information. You can do it, just you need to watch out for where you aggregate those things.
Cool. Yeah, I think also on Google Sheets, there's a row limit as well, which could also cause a problem.
Yeah, 10 million cells, but it slows down at like 2 million. So you can put 10 million cells, but 2 million is where it gets stuck.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a question from Dragos, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Do you have any monitoring features related to API limits?
The yes and no. The downside, I think Google just put out a statement that they're going to add that as a thing, as like a field inside of your Google Analytics their Google Analytics connector. The downside of the API limits is that you have to hit the API in order to know how many tokens you've used. So in order to know how much you've used, you have to use one of the things that you're trying to use less of. There aren't many. I've only seen like Analytics Canvas that does that. I'm not like their spokesperson by any means, but like I haven't seen any other tools that like give you that real time every time they hit it. But I think Google's going to add that because everyone's really, really frustrated.
Yeah, I think of Google Cloud, at least on there, you get kind of API usage, and can easily kind of see thresholds, usage, almost like monitoring a server sort of thing. Yeah, it kind of feels that piece is kind of missing. The follow-up question from Dragos again, it would be good to see if you are close to reaching the limit or not. So almost like an ahead of time, like slow down, or increase the threshold timeout duration, like as in almost like just 20, when you hit the 80%, okay, like slow down.
Yeah, I think the problem is Dragos and anybody watching is that like if you have clients that are viewing it, like what do? Say don't look at your report for the next 20 minutes? Like, oh hey, it's like you're using your report that we built for you too much. Or if you're like talking to your boss, like, hey, sorry, like we looked at it too much this hour. We're gonna have to wait till the next board meeting to view this. Like that just doesn't fly. And so like even knowing how many tokens you have, like you're still gonna hit it, like at least in my like situation, like so that's kind of where that is.
Yeah, and also thinking of the C-level suite, that if they're looking at these reports, they're not necessarily going to know what these errors are. So it's kind of,
it's like a pain in the butt. Like it's honestly like Google doesn't like, yeah. So it works at Google. Hit me up. I'll tell you how to make your product better.
Yeah, I think I think we've got a few things to juggle at the moment with Google Analytics 4 and everything else. But
yes.
We've got an anonymous question here. Do you think the existing supermetrics will be good enough?
So I have not tested the supermetrics connection. I've read their like documentation on it, and basically what they say they're going to do is like they say they're caching it in the background, but that still is going to have the same kind of problems, I think, but I don't know. Like I haven't tested it out, but they're basically saying they're going to try and cache that. So they're going to serve you like old information, not old, like previously cached. So like every hour, maybe they have like a threshold. It could be good enough. I'm assuming like there are some smart people that work at all these connectors. Like there's some smart people that work there. I'm assuming they're going to figure out how to slow down that monitoring so that it's not like a live connection. I don't know if anyone's completely figured it out, but I think these connectors are going to figure it out eventually. It's just going to be a lot less fluid than it was 2 months ago. And that's probably going to be the case no matter what.